Welcome back to the Wow Factor. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Mann. On today's episode, we head south of the border. As U.S. companies accelerate their shift from production in China to Mexico, we're seeing unprecedented concentration of manufacturing investment inside Mexico's Golden Triangle of Monterrey, Mexico City, and Guadalajara. This massive nearshoring wave presents tremendous opportunities, but also turbulent challenges, especially when industrial space is at a premium, Mexican freight is dominated by trucking, and supply chain activity is really unprecedented. Joining me to discuss how we are supporting manufacturers, distributors, and logistics companies is El Presidente of our Mexican operations, Brady Rodgers. Brady, bienvenido al espectáculo.
Good morning, Dr. Mann. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to join you and excited to have this discussion this morning about how we're supporting the market and the industry in Mexico.
Absolutely. Well, my Spanish is not really great. So what I'm hoping we can do here is, as we're having the conversation, I've got a couple of questions for you today. Maybe you can answer in English and also in Spanish. Would that be
wonderful?
Awesome.
I'll repeat what you said. Mark acaba de decir que mi español no es muy bueno, entonces voy a darte la oportunidad a repetir mis preguntas en español y después dar tus respuestas en inglés y español. Okay.
Muy bien. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive in here. So you have said that our recent expansion into Mexico underscores a strong level of dedication to the Mexican market and meeting evolving storage needs with practical solutions. Now, you had some early exposure to storage trailers and the supply chain world already. Can you please tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. Brady, tú dijiste que nuestra expansión reciente en México se enfoca en un nivel de dedicación muy fuerte al mercado mexicano y al apoyar en las necesidades más recién por almacenaje y las soluciones pragmáticas. Tú nos has dicho que has tenido experiencia temprano en tu vida, en tu carrera, con los remolques de almacenaje y en el segmento del supply chain. ¿Puedes comentarte un poquito de esto? So sure, Mark, to answer your question, first of all, I had some early exposure to trailer use because I grew up here in Missouri on a farming and ranching operation. We had several acres. We ran quite a few head of cattle and horses, and we had several hundred acres of row crops. And it was interesting. I'll date myself. So my first exposure to storage trailers goes back 40, 45 years, if you will. And we used to use storage trailers in our production. We would store grain for feeding our cattle. And we also would keep seed for our planting in a 50-foot, 3-foot box trailer that my dad had. Because we had a pretty significant horse operation, we actually had a horse stable. And, in the horse world, tack and saddles and all those things are pretty expensive. And we actually had a dry van trailer that we kept locked up, and we used it as our tack room and saddle room. And then we had another trailer that we just kind of used for miscellaneous items that we just wanted to get out of the way. Sometimes, it can get a bit messy when you have things of value, but you need a place to put them out of the way. And it's interesting because those three uses, we see those that we saw on the farm when I was a kid. We see that often today. Sometimes you have valuable things that you want to isolate and secure. Sometimes you have raw materials for your production that you want to have sort of a buffer and keep extra on hand. And then sometimes you just want to clean up your dock, your aisleways, your production area, your warehouse itself, and stick things out of the way. I'm going to repeat that in Spanish. Sí, Mark, yo tenía experiencia temprano en la vida con los remolques de almacenaje porque mi papá tenía un rancho de vacas y caballos y también tuvimos una granja eh, plantando maíz, trigo, estas cosas. Y fíjate, usamos remolques, cajas secas por almacenaje de los alimentos por los animales, lo usamos por las semillas, por los sembrajes, lo usamos en el área por todos los sillas de los caballos y tuvimos uno específicamente designado a todo el trabajo que hicimos en el entrenamiento de caballos y también tuvimos otra caja que usábamos por cosas en generales, cosas que quisiéramos limpiar, y tener que tener un valor y lo queremos guardar, pero necesitamos un lugar por ponerlos, lo cual es muy similar a los clientes que tenemos en el día de hoy, que tienen varios diferentes necesidades por un bodega móvil, ¿verdad? Y lo hemos visto y lo vi yo muy temprano. Another thing about, so the second part of that answer is, I had some early exposure in the supply chain world, Mark, because I actually, right out of the university, I sold mobile rail car movers. And so I was dealing with large plants all over the Western U.S. and then eventually in Mexico that would ship or receive their product by rail. And I was able to learn early on how costly it was if the supply line was somehow delayed or the sending line was somehow delayed. It was very, very costly. When you think about automotive production, some of the plants that we have in Mexico, if they were just shut down for one day, that cost anywhere from $30 million to up to $50 million per day with shutdown productions. In the electronics sector, which we also offer storage trailers in the electronics world, you're looking anywhere from $5 million up to $50 million per day, depending on the operation. We also support the food and snack production industry. If you have a plant shut down in that sector, you're talking about $100,000 up to $1 million a day, depending on the size of the plant. And one example that, and I knew this from my third exposure, I was a plant operations supervisor for ConAgra Frozen Foods. We had 2 8-hour production shifts, and we had 1 8-hour sanitation and maintenance shift. And when a plant like that is shut down, if you just have one production line shut down for a day in that industry, it can, that equates out to anywhere from $100,000 to $300,000 a day of finished product. So it can get pretty expensive pretty quick if supply lines are somehow shut down or you don't have extra material to feed the supply line. So it can become very costly. And I did have, early exposure to that. Now let me repeat that long-winded answer in Spanish. Como dices, Mark, otra experiencia que yo tenía en el supply chain, yo graduándole de la universidad, vendí tractores de arrastre ferroviario a los diferentes segmentos, los diferentes industrias que recibieran o mandaban sus productos por vía ferroviario. Y en eso aprendió qué tan caro era cuando tuvieran que cerrar una planta o cerrar una línea por un día o 2 días. Y la cadena de suministro es un parte bastante importante en todas las industrias. Y esos son unas observaciones míos y contemplando las experiencias que yo tenía desde joven en almacenes móviles o cajas secas y las experiencias que yo tenía en el sector del cadena de suministro y en el sector de producción industrial.
Excelente. Excelente. That's about as far as it goes. So let me ask you this. You mentioned growing up on a farm in Missouri. So how did a farm boy from Missouri end up fluent in Spanish and doing business in Mexico for the past 25 years? And more importantly, why is Mexico so special to you, Brady?
Okay, that's a great question. I appreciate you asking that, Mark. So, many of you may know or may not know, in Guatemala, there was an extensive amount of conflict for over 35 years, from 1960 to 1996. I was part of a disaster relief team in 1986 and went to Guatemala when I was 16 years old. We were in the mountains there working to build homes for orphans and widows, which there were many. In the 1980s, it was when the conflict was the absolute worst. And so I had the opportunity, it was just for a couple of weeks, Mark, but I had the opportunity to work side by side with the Guatemalan people. And it gave me this appreciation for Latinos. It gave me appreciation for their hard work, their hospitality, their kindness, especially when you consider the tremendous devastation that they had been going through. And I think that really planted a seed in my heart to want to learn more about the culture, but also to be able to learn the language and communicate with Hispanic peoples. So that's kind of what really got it all started. And then when I was in college, I did a year abroad. I went to the University of the Americas in Puebla, Mexico, where I studied Spanish. And then I began, at that time, some very simple business operations as well as ministry work in Mexico. And really, I guess I've just kind of continued that ever since. So early in life, I had really got to travel all over Mexico in the early 1990s. And Mark, it didn't matter where I went, but I was always warmly greeted by these wonderful people with open arms. And I got to learn more about this beautiful culture, the people, the landscape, the architecture, the music, of course, the food. And I just really began to love Mexico and love the Mexican people. And so today I'm just really honored to be a part of supporting the diverse manufacturing, distribution, and logistics operations in such an incredible country with such diverse businesses and with such incredibly talented and warm-hearted people. I guess that's a bit of a long answer, but that's why. Now I'll attempt to give you that version in Spanish real quick. Mark me preguntó cómo un hijo de la granja en Missouri llegó a ser fluido en español y haciendo negocio en México por los últimos 25 años. Y más importantemente, ¿por qué México es tan especial a mí? ¿Por qué me gusta tanto a México y los mexicanos? Yo le comento que, si recuerdan, de 1960 hasta 96 era mucho conflicto en Guatemala. Yo fui a apoyar en mi primer apoyo en desastres en Guatemala en 1986. Esos fueron años muy difíciles, con mucho conflicto en Guatemala, y quedó muchos viudos, muchos orfanos. Y yo fui parte de un grupo que fuimos a construir casas en las montañas, organizado por una organización, y estar ahí por 2 semanas me dio mucho amistad con los latinos, con los guatemaltecas, ver su cariño, su ética de trabajar, su capaz de sobrevivir tantos temas difíciles y seguir tratando con un sonrisa en la cara y tratando sobrevivir. Y la verdad, eso sembró en mí un deseo de conocer más de los hispanos y de aprender español. Entonces, llegando a la universidad, me programé un año vivir y estudiar español en Puebla, México, donde pasaba 2 semestres en la UDLA. Y en este momento empecé mis primeras obras de negocio y también en mis primeras obras por la iglesia y obras de misericordia. Y en esos tiempos, pues la verdad, en tantos viajes, tanto conociendo a México, me dio tanto aprecio por la gente. por el país, por el campo, por la arquitectura, por la música, por la comida, por todo lo que incluye la cultura mexicana. Es un lugar muy especial, es un lugar muy... han penetrado mi corazón y la verdad quiero mucho a México, quiero mucho a los mexicanos. Entonces, para mí es un honor tener la oportunidad de soportar el, los industrias tan diversos en México, las cadenas de suministro, las operaciones, todas las áreas del negocio que podemos soportar con una solución tan simple, pero hace un impacto tan grande, lo cual son rentando cajas de almacenaje, el bodega móvil. Y para mí es un honor y agrado mucho esta oportunidad. Thank you, Mark.
Very good. So Warehouse on Wheels currently has 2 key locations in Mexico to support all the different industrial parks surrounding Monterrey and Bajío. Can you tell us a little bit about all of that and how it affects your ability to support current and future customers in those areas?
Sure. Thank you, Mark. First of all, I want to talk a minute about our team. Then I want to talk a minute about our company. And then I want to mention a few things about that actual location and our inventory. We have really a wonderful team, from our commercial team to our operations team to our administrative team. Just very dedicated, hardworking, loyal to me, loyal to our customers, loyal to WOW and our business, and loyal to one another. And I'm so pleased. Some of the guys in that team, as I mentioned earlier, I've been doing business in Mexico for a long time. My operations manager has more than 10 years with me on other projects. My administrative manager has about 8 years with me on other projects. And then everybody else now that is on our team down there, they're like family. I feel like I've known them for a long time, but they are so dedicated to the customer. They're so dedicated to this project and these specific areas. Our locations that we have selected to sort of plant our flag, first of all, right there just north of downtown Monterrey, we're located we are actually in Apodaca, Mexico, which is a suburb of Monterrey. And we're positioned right off the highway that goes to Saltillo and right off of the highway that goes to Laredo, Texas, which many of you know, Laredo is the busiest port in the world. And so we're positioned very well at the kind of the top or the head of that golden triangle. And then when you work further down that corridor, we are located just outside of Querétaro, Mexico, on the highway that heads toward Mexico City. And so it is a wonderful location to support the Bajío, what is known as the Bajío, and all of that industry that goes on in those places. In the Monterrey area, there are over 130 industrial parks. In Querétaro, it's very similar. In the Bajío, I will say not just Querétaro, but that region, which encompasses 5 or 6 cities there, but there's about 125 to 130 industrial parks, and all somewhere between, depending on whose statistics you believe, somewhere between 80 and 90% of the production, distribution, logistics work is within that golden triangle. And so we are there, with our first 2 locations, and we're able to support that with inventory. I'm so thankful. Warehouse on Wheels is a tremendous company. Over 40,000, trailers in 36, 37 different locations between the U.S., Canada, and now Mexico. Having those kind of resources is vital, because it allows me to have the fleet that I need to be able to give a timely response. We always have fleet on hand. We always have rent-ready fleet on hand that is in excellent condition, dry, safe, and dark, as Jonathan always says. And we, are able to respond quickly, which we'll talk about that a little more later, I think. But that, so those kind of factors combine to really allow us, if you will, the ability to be positioned in such a way to support those, the markets and the supply chain. Now I will attempt to answer that in Spanish for you, Mark. So, la pregunta que tenía Mark fue, ¿puedes comentarte un poquito acerca de tú capaz de soportar los clientes que tienen y los clientes que van a tener en el futuro, específicamente en la área de geográfica que están ubicados por Monterrey y por Querétaro? Y mi comentario fue que, por primero, quería mencionar mi equipo, porque eso siempre es la tema y la cosa más importante. Tenemos un grupo de entre la gente comercial, administrativo, operativo. Tenemos un equipo muy dedicado, muy sincero, muy honesto, con mucha integridad y muy fiel a los clientes. La verdad me siento muy orgulloso del equipo que tenemos ahí en Monterrey, Querétaro, porque tienen un deseo muy fuerte para soportar el mercado allí en estas ubicaciones de Monterrey y ahí del Bajío. También, obviamente, ahí nuestro sucursal actual está por Apodaca, un tantito norte del downtown de Monterrey. Estamos apegados al Querétaro, que anda por Laredo y que anda por Saltillo. Entonces, estamos bien posicionados para soportar hasta la frontera con cajas secas, toda la zona del noreste, y con el patio en Querétaro estamos en el otro fin del triángulo de oro que existe ahí en México. Y tenemos un flotilla de buen estado. Wow es una empresa con bastantes recursos, como tienen más de casi 40 patios, como tienen casi 40,000 cajas secas en su flotilla. Tenemos muchos recursos para poder atender a los clientes a la volumen que quieren. Algunos que quieren 3 cajas, otros que quieren 100 cajas. Tenemos los recursos y siempre tenemos en inventario cajas listo, stock listo, rent ready, de buen estado, listo para entregar entre 24 y 48 horas. Tocamos en otros detalles más en la entrevista. Thank you, Mark.
Absolutamente. Now, let's talk about that nearshoring boom, right? So the boom here in Mexico, it has significantly increased the need for more production, warehousing space, and distribution centers. What are some of the current challenges that your customers and potential customers face when they need more space for raw materials and goods in processed parts, finished products, etc.?
Okay, thank you, Mark. So if you think about it, our customers, when they need more space, they kind of have 3 different options, right? They can either rent a warehouse off-site, they can either add an additional warehouse in their particular plant that they already have, or they can use the mobile warehouse solution of using trailers. I'll address those in reverse order. There really is no one who is providing this service at a national level, really focused in the storage rental business. Now, I will make a quick mention for our friends BMS, positioned in Sonora, and they cover that market there in Hermosillo and Nogales. But there is really no national company that is supporting, that is focused on storage trailers. And so what happens today, a lot of, our customers prior often were using the trailers from their existing trucking companies for temporary storage. But that presents a problem. First of all, in Mexico, there is an overall shortage of good over-the-road trailers, okay? there's a shortage of trucking trailers, 53-foot, 48-foot drive-in trailers. When our customers have a need and they're not able to unload those trailers right away and they need to keep them for extra storage, first of all, the cost is extremely high. The penalties that they will often pay their trucking companies are high. If the trucking companies have excess trailers they can use, oftentimes they are not in over-the-road condition. So a lot of times the trailers that they do leave behind might have leaks. They might not be safe. They might not be dry. They might not be dark, right? And so there's this constant pressure. If I'm the trucking company and I leave you, the industrial customer, some of my trailers for 2 or 3 days or 4 days or 5 days, I'm going to constantly pressure you to give those back to me because I make money when I'm using those trailers to ship goods and services. I don't make a lot of money having them sit there in your warehouse space. And so I'm going to either swap those out for inferior trailers, or I'm going to charge you an extremely high fee comparable to what I would need, what I could make shipping, or I'm just going to pressure the heck out of you to give them back to me and get them back. So there's constantly this friction that exists when that happens in the current market. If they were to go off-site and rent a warehouse, that also presents challenges. It presents security challenges. If it's an affordable warehouse, it might not be in an area that is as safe. It presents challenges, logistics challenges, because Monterrey has very high traffic. And so to get from point A to point B in Monterrey, if you're hitting the wrong time of the day and you need to offload some of your products at a warehouse, it might take you an entire day just to get that done with one trailer. And so it's not very pragmatic. It's not very practical if it takes you 4 hours to drive 15 kilometers. That's just not practical. And so it may sound attractive to be able to rent an space warehouse, but it's a bit complicated when you take it in the context of where we're located. And building additional space is also a challenge, because if you think about the capital expenditure that requires, let's say I have an existing plant. Well, the nice thing, and I love when Jonathan talks about the elasticity of you can shrink or expand your space as you need. So if you needed 10 trailers, say you need about 5,000 square feet of space, you can handle that with 10 trailers, right? But are you going to build it? If you're going to take the time and the money to build a warehouse, are you just going to build one that's small? What if you build one that's 100,000 square feet? Sometimes it's full, sometimes it's empty, but you have made a significant outlay in cash on that fixed asset when you need every dollar you can for production, when you need every dollar you can, to make money. And so that it's not the most viable option, not to mention the fact that, Monterrey has been a warehouse, manufacturing hub for a long time. And so there are some industrial parks where you just can't go adding additional space like that. There's always room to park another 5 trailers or 10 trailers, but some places it's pretty tight, and there's really no practical or pragmatic way to construct extra space, right? And then the other option is, simply that, when you consider our value proposition, and I, we'll probably get into that in a little more detail, but when you consider the time lost, back to that first, comment that I made, if you have a production line that gets shut down for 1 hour, waiting on buffer raw materials to arrive, and that hour just cost you $40,000.
Yep.
All of a sudden, the rental of 5 or 6 or 7 rental trailers becomes pretty cheap. It's one of the best decisions you can make, and that's what I love about our business and about our option, because we have a very simple solution that can solve incredibly large problems, right? Now, I suppose I should answer that in Spanish. La pregunta de Mark fue, en un lugar donde hay tanto crecimiento, tantas necesidades por expansión, tantas necesidades por espacio extra, ¿qué están o cómo le están tratando tus clientes actuales o futuros con esa problemática? Y yo le mencioné que realmente hay como 3 opciones ahorita en el mercado. O sea, pueden construir una propia bodega en su propia planta, pueden ir a rentar un bodega en otro lugar o pueden usar cajas secas como una extensión de la planta. Ahorita muchos que rentan la caja seca de tu transportista saben que a veces es una lucha porque ellos, su ganancia, su enfoque es mover materiales, rodar, no es por almacenar. Entonces, cuando ellos van a dejar sus cajas a usted por 3, 4 días, y estos 3, 4 días convierte a 3, 4 semanas, tienen que cobrar mucho por día y queda muy caro por usted. O hacen un cambio con sus remolques viejitos que a lo mejor no son de buen estado. Pueden permitir filtraciones de luz, filtraciones de aire. Quizás que los patines no son seguros, las puertas no son seguros, el piso no de tan buena condición y presente temas de seguridad. Nosotros enfocamos en rentar la caja seca, enfocamos en tener una caja de buen estado, enfocar en tener una caja por un precio razonable y enfocar en tener una caja al tiempo y la medida que usted necesita. Si requieren 5 cajas o 10 cajas o 20 cajas, pueden aumentar o reducir a su gusto.
All right. Very good. So you mentioned the word elasticity a little bit ago.
Yeah.
And in the U.S., we do talk about trailers from the standpoint of elasticity. In Mexico, industrial parks are really strategically located near major highways and border crossings, so the ability to rent and use off-site warehousing is really hindered, like you said, by heavy traffic delays. I mean, it could take you a day, right, to get
That's
to
right.
and from. So there's also security issues related to off-site storage space, and that flexibility is even more critical. So a lot of leaders are still seeing storage trailers as that short-term Band-Aid. Tell
Right.
me about a customer in Mexico where
Yeah.
that thinking changed and they started to treat mobile storage as a core part of their operation.
Right. No, thank you, Mark. That's a great question. And so, honestly, it almost has happened with us every time. Most of the customers who begin renting trailers from me have rented trailers thinking we're going to take 2 or 3, we might need them for a month, 2 months. But then when they see the utilization of these trailers and they see how efficient it is to be able to load them, unload them, move them to favorable areas in their plant, when they see the ability to store extra material, when they see the ability to reduce cost, when they see the ability to, I mean, my gosh, we've even had customers who've expanded production lines. We have customers that have won other projects, went from 5 lines up to 6 lines because they needed extra space under roof. And so they would rent our trailers. They've been renting our trailers long term, and that is 100% their warehouse, a bit similar to the Toyota business model, where now what used to be their storage warehouse is now where they've added additional production lines and productivity, and they count 100% on storage trailers to store their goods and materials. We have some other examples. We have some customers where they had to ramp up production, and the production sort of got ahead of the supply chain, either because there were delays at the border, just 3 or 4 hours north there. Remember, I said that the Laredo border is the busiest. Thousands and thousands of trucks go through that border every day. But what happens when there are delays and then you get stuck there at the border? Again, that gets extremely expensive. So some of our customers prefer to hold off hold them there at the plant. We have had customers, we've gotten there with storage trailers, and their outloading dock was so full, they couldn't get anything else in their dock. And so when we've delivered the trailers, we've pulled them right up to their loading dock, them load them, and then actually that added service where we move them away. And as we're bringing storage trailers in, so we've, freed up their loading docks, added production areas, reduced general storage cost, allowed them to have buffer materials for spikes in production, long needed spikes in production, allowed them to clean up areas. It can become very unsafe in a plant if your corridors and your working areas are overloaded with material. It can be very unproductive and even unsafe. And so there have just been a lot of benefits that our customers have seen from that, right? Now I will kind of mention, I'll repeat that in Spanish. Repeat your original question, though. I want to make sure I get that right in Spanish.
Yeah, so we talked earlier about elasticity. So in the U.S., we talk about trailers from the standpoint of being elastic. And in Mexico,
that's right.
Industrial parks are strategically located near major highways and border crossings. You mentioned that. And if there are traffic delays, there are major problems. And security issues are also related to offsite warehouse space.
That's right.
And that flexibility is even more critical. So a lot of leaders still see storage trailers as the Band-Aid. But tell me about a customer in Mexico where that thinking changed and they started to treat mobile storage as part of the core operation.
Dime, Brady, unos ejemplos en donde los clientes, en vez de solo pensar en un caja seca como un respuesta temporal, cómo están convirtiendo verlo como una estrategia de largo plazo. Y mi comentario al doctor fue que hemos visto, pues casi muchos de mis clientes o todos empiezan rentando a la vez quizás un temporario corto o un volumen bajo, 3, 5 cajas. En dado caso, aumentan el tiempo de la renta, aumentan la cantidad de cajas que usan. ¿Por qué? Porque han visto que es una manera muy eficiente, muy seguro, muy flexible, muy ágil, poder tocar los diferentes problemáticas que tengan en la planta. Unos ejemplos, tengo unos clientes que necesitaban más espacio en planta para poner otras líneas de producción y han podido contar en nosotros al 100% cómo rentar la caja seca para guardar su material prima, su material terminado en proceso y contar al 100% con su espacio valoroso bajo techo por producción, por más ingresos. Por ejemplo, también hemos podido ayudar bastante en reducir costos mensuales, costos diarios, y por eso lo vean como algo de largo plazo que pueden aumentar y pueden usar en su propia planta. Y también al tener la capacidad de proteger, aislar ciertos materiales, hacer selecciones de varios materiales, estar listo cuando tienen picos. Y también está bien interesante porque en ciertas plantas tenemos 2, 3, 4 diferentes usuarios. I was also mentioning that within some plants, we actually have 3 or 4 different user groups or user types. And that didn't happen right away, but over the course of the weeks and months, one person over here sees how this person over here is using them, and all of a sudden you have another manager saying, we need to add to our storage trailers. So it's been very interesting and exciting to see how all this develops and the way that it does allow them to have a business model that is scalable, cost-effective, very elastic, have the space when you need it, scale it down when you don't. It's been a tremendous, tremendous value add to our customers, Mark.
Perfecto. Love it. So you mentioned earlier the rich and beautiful culture in Mexico and Central America. And Mexico has a relationship-driven operating culture. It's built on trust, reliability, long-term partnerships. So how have you earned your way into the market? And more importantly, how do you foster repeat business?
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate that question because you're right. Mexico is very relationship-driven culture, trust, reliability, long-term partnerships that even turn into friendships. I think for me, that starts with quality people. I think people are the most important thing you can have in any organization, and it certainly doesn't fall short here. To have people on your team that are quality from the word go, from the things they say, from the things they do, that are attentive, responsive to emails, responsive to phone calls, responsive to demands. If when our customers call, we had a customer just yesterday call and said, hey, we need 3 more trailers. We got them delivered the same day. And so one of the ways that we have earned our way into these relationships, and I think that's an important word, is earning, because we do need to earn it. I don't want anybody to take us at face value. Anybody can just make all kinds of promises and say anything, but what has helped us earn our way is that we keep our promises. And having such dedicated staff has been a huge part of that. Our service team is so responsive when we're delivering. We're so responsive. Our administrative team is so responsive to, Mexico, lots of documents going back and forth, as you can imagine. And, our administrative team, very quick to respond and get you the documents that you need, invoicing issues, answering those kind of concerns. We want to be someone who is easy to do business with. And also, I think just the fact that, our pricing is fair. Our policies are very fair. We don't call something damage that would be normal wear, right? If something is normal wear, it's normal wear. And a customer, and oftentimes in the rental business in general, I'm not just talking about Mexico, but oftentimes in the rental business, people, companies can try to pass off damage fees for something that was really just normal wear. And our companies will find that Warehouse on Wheels is very fair, upright. One of our core values is do the right thing. And we believe in doing the right thing. And then another thing that I try to do is pull my team into things right away. When we have a new customer, or even before you start doing business with us, we, through our process of getting to know your application, through our process of getting to know us, through our process of discovery, we can't serve you well if we don't understand your business well. And so I really believe in discovery. I really believe in getting to know where your pain points are in your business, or even just your likes and dislikes. And so I think all those things are important as we earn our way into the market, as we earn our way to get repeat business. We're just not going to get somebody's business and forget about them. We're going to keep. We have a saying in Mexico, and that is, my team will move mountains to take care of you. And we will do that. We treat the other thing we like to talk about, we talk about the golden triangle in Mexico. Well, within that golden triangle exists a golden customer base, because we believe in treating all of our customers like gold. And now I need to repeat that in Spanish. La pregunta fue que en México es un mercado mucho manejado de una cultura operativa de relaciones, en donde cuentan en confianza y donde cuentan en relaciones de largo plazo. ¿Cómo han podido ganar ustedes la confianza en ese mercado, en el negocio? Y mi comentario a Mark fue, por primero, sigo hablando de mi gente, pero es tener gente de calidad, gente que tienen una disposición, servir y ser muy atento a los clientes, desde el punto comercial hasta el punto de servicio y soporte. Somos bastante atentos a los clientes, muy genuino, muy sincero y muy razonable. Cuando un cliente nos marca para cajas adicionales o retirar cajas, tratamos de dar una respuesta inmediata entre el mismo día, 48 horas. Si tienen un problema con la caja y quieren que lo reparamos, nosotros lo reparamos. Con los clientes, parte de nuestro valor que ofrecemos, pasamos a revisar las cajas una vez al mes, una vez a 2 meses, revisar las llantas, revisar la condición, checar las cajas bien por los clientes, asegurar que están en buen estado. Esa es parte de nuestro plan. Eso es parte de nuestra cultura. And Mark, one of the things I didn't mention is kind of what I call our three-point inspection process. So, as you know, most of my trailers I buy and we bring in from the U.S., or some from Mexico. But when a trailer hits our yard, it gets inspected. When we are done with that renovation process, whether it's painting, sealing the roof, replacing flooring, replacing cross arms, fixing doors, new seals, whatever it is we need to do, when we're done with that renovation work, it goes through another inspection. And then if you were the client and you call and say, Brady, we need 10 trailers in the next couple days, we will immediately select those 10 trailers, put Dr. Mark Mann's name on them, and they'll go through another quick inspection, even if it's just blowing any dust that might have accumulated out of there. We give that much attention to the detail so that when you get a finished product, it's safe, it's in good quality, it's functional, it is also cosmetically, everything is very uniform, which is very important to our customers. I'm going to repeat that in Spanish because that was one I left out. Otra manera que ganamos la confianza de nuestros clientes es un sistema de 3 inspecciones. Cuando llegan las cajas que compro desde Estados Unidos, hacemos una inspección. Cuando hagamos reparaciones o renovaciones a la caja, pasa por otra inspección. Si usted como cliente nos marca y pide 5, 10, 15 cajas, lo asignamos a usted. Hace otra revisión, que si son temas muy simples, quitar polvo que a lo mejor ha acumulado o algo así, pero hace una tercera inspección antes de que lo entregamos al cliente. Entonces aseguramos bastante la calidad y seguridad de las cajas. Thank you, Mark.
Absolutely. You know, whether it's in the United States or Canada or Mexico, when people need trailers, they need them. When they call us, their hair's on fire, right?
Yes.
We talk like that sometimes. So you made a comment that often your ability to respond can be hindered by the same customer who has that immediate need. Explain that to me.
Okay, so thank you that's a great question, Mark. So what happens, especially in Mexico, if you think about the process in Mexico, and if you are a potential customer, not an existing customer, if you're an existing customer, this doesn't really apply because once you're set up in our system and we're set up in yours, but in Mexico, the approval process is a bit heavy. It's a bit slow. First of all, they normally have to prove their business case. Then there's some sort of documents review. Then there's the vendor registration process. And then there's issuing the purchase orders. That process can be very lengthy, especially with the types of customers that we're serving. On the one hand, you might have a user over here that needs the trailers in a week, and you might have the administrative and purchasing group over here saying, what's going to take us 4 weeks just to go through that process so that we can be in the place to deliver trailers to you. But if you think about the inherent need for storage trailers, like you say, usually it's when somebody's hair is on fire. So how do we try to help overcome that? First of all, when someone has expressed an interest right away in our business, we are very upfront about trying to start that process as early as we can, that vendor registration process, giving them, opportunity to really analyze the business case. Our customers have anywhere from 15 to 20 different types of questions that really need to kind of come out in the application analysis. And we will do that right away. And we will try to identify what they need, how they need it, and how we can help them. But then more importantly, we respond on our part as quickly as we can to, that administrative process. And I've even had, look, the kind of customers we're dealing with are large multinational companies with tremendous reputations. I've even had a few customers I had one customer that had to have 5 trailers right away. And just based on an email that they sent to me, said, Brady, we'll commit to this. We'll agree to your price. Can you get us 5 trailers while we go through that process? I've even done that, Mark. Now, I kind of handle that on a case-by-case basis because we all have processes that we like to stick to. But we will, again, this gets back to that thing of moving mountains. We will do whatever we can to take care of our customers as quickly and responsively as we can, right? So I hope that answers that question. Now I'll do my best to repeat it in Spanish. La pregunta que Mark tuvo fue que obviamente cuando tus usuarios o en ese sector cuando requieren cajas lo requieren muchas veces en manera inmediato. Pero tú has dicho que el proceso es muy largo a veces para que te den la luz verde y poder de operar ahí con estos tipos de clientes. ¿Qué es lo que haces tú para tratar de ayudar y aliviar esta problemática? Yo mencioné que pues casi todos los clientes que servimos tienen que probar su business case, su caso de negocio, revisar los documentos, el proceso de alta con las empresas en México a veces es muy tardado y obviamente después de mandar los órdenes de compra. Por nuestra parte, tratamos aliviar o apoyar o disminuir este riesgo en varias formas. Por primero, actuamos nosotros muy rápido con el análisis de la aplicación, entendiendo bien su modelo de negocio, contestando los 10 o 20 diferentes preguntas que van a tener a nuestro servicio y ofrecemos un servicio bien adaptado a la necesidad del cliente, aunque nuestras soluciones simples con las cajas, en la manera que lo contestamos y lo ofrecemos, a veces se llega a ser muy a forma a usted con varios variables. También por nuestra parte, es muy fácil ser aprobado como proveedor por nosotros y a su lado para ser un vendedor registrado. Por nuestra parte, tratamos de empezar este proceso lo más pronto posible para acelerar la situación por el usuario, porque es muy común que en el principio estamos tratando con la área de compras que tiene ciertos requisitos bastante importantes y el usuario que tiene una necesidad inmediata también bastante importante. A veces somos gente de confianza y con los tipos de clientes que tratamos, hasta hemos entregado, estar en el proceso de alta, hemos entregado cajas por una emergencia con nada más con un correo, tratando de trabajar en confianza con los tipos de clientes que servimos, que son clientes y empresas internacionales, son empresas con reputación muy fuerte, pero créeme y seguro que tratamos de hacer todo por nuestra parte en un proceso bastante acelerado. Y cuando uno se convierte a ser un cliente o que somos dado alta como proveedor, muchas veces nuestra respuesta de entregar cajas es el mismo día o mínimo entre 48 horas. Entonces ese es nuestro compromiso por ustedes.
Brady, this has been an absolutely enlightening look at the interconnected North American production region. It really has. Now, while trailer storage, it offers a real simple and pragmatic and affordable solution, the applications are versatile, right? The solutions you offer can be very specific to individual needs. So for anyone that's listening in Mexico that is interested in collaborating with your team, trying to understand, is this a viable solution for my immediate need or, strategically thinking for a long-term operation, what's the first thing they should do? What should they do next?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mann. That's a great question. I'm going to give you a couple answers to that, okay? First of all, let us get to know you as well as we can, as quickly as we can. Schedule a time for a phone call, schedule a time for a Teams meeting, schedule a time for our team to come by and visit your plant. We will do either of those things. We can accomplish a lot simply via Teams. And I will usually have a couple of my different important team members on that call so we can address all your questions as upfront right away as we can. And in that, we do kind of that early application analysis, if you will, so we can understand how we need to adapt to meet your needs. So I think the most important thing you can do is to contact us, and you'll have our information on our website. My name again is Brady Rodgers. I'm the president of WOW. Edgar Rioja is my commercial manager there in the country. And, please reach out to us, schedule time to meet us. Also, as a side note, we have a very rigorous show schedule this year. We're planning on being at the Logistics Show in Mexico City in 2 weeks. We're going to be at the Reynosa Show coming up. We're going to be back at the Monterrey Show coming up. So perhaps your need isn't so immediate, but you see the value in this long term. And I will repeat this. I've said this over and over again, but I don't think that there exists a single company that can't find some kind of valuable, pragmatic, and affordable use for storage trailers, whether that's at a small scale or a large scale. And again, the fact that the elasticity of storage trailers allows you to meet your specific need. So I think the most important thing to do is let's get in touch. Let's communicate. Let's get to know one another. Let us get to know a little bit about your needs. And that is how I would love to follow up with you. And I welcome the opportunity to be of service to you. Our customers know they can call my team 7 days a week, night or day. And every one of our customers has my cell phone number. And they also know they can call me 7 days a week, night or day. And we try to be extremely accessible, and we look forward to being of service to you. La pregunta que Mark tenía fue, ¿cuál deberían ser los próximos etapas si vemos la necesidad o hasta que tenemos una curiosidad contigo de este servicio? ¿Qué hacemos? Y mi comentario a Mark fue, por primero, nos encantaría tener la oportunidad de conocerte. Podemos programar una visita presencial en planta. Podemos programar una cita virtual por Teams. Podemos programar una llamada conmigo, con mi equipo, para que obviamente van a tener ustedes varias preguntas que podemos contestar. Y también vamos a tener varias preguntas nosotros para entender su aplicación, sus pragmáticas específicas para tener una respuesta específicamente por usted. Entonces, para mí, la próxima etapa es buscarnos en internet. Mándanos correo electrónico, pero ponte en contacto con nosotros, por favor. Con tanto gusto estamos a la orden, con mucho deseo de conocerlos, soportarlos. Y aunque usted solo tiene una curiosidad, vean la necesidad quizás en el futuro, pues por favor empiezan tempranito a conocernos. Y el otro comentario es, antes de tomar la decisión de firmar un contrato de una bodega de largo plazo, debe ser parte de tu evaluación considerar nosotros. One last thing I will say, Mark, because there are a lot of people in Monterrey right now at the point of signing a contract for 3 years or 5 years for extra warehouse space. I would encourage you to call us right away. Just get to know our service, get to know the different terms and conditions that we can offer, because if you're going to do a true economic analysis, benefit analysis, production analysis of this option, I would encourage you to do it before you go sign a long-term, costly warehouse contract. You may be also considering signing a contract or having a space, but it's short, Maybe you're someone that wants to plant a new business in Monterrey, and everything looks beautiful about that space except you're missing spot under roof. Instead of thinking that that spot won't work for me, if you have enough production space, if you have enough office space, consider us as a full-time solution for your warehousing space. That would be my ask, and that would be my advice. Si usted, quizás usted tiene un negocio nuevo y está contemplando firmar un contrato por un espacio en un parque industrial, y tal vez has encontrado un lugar que es perfecto, pero no tiene tanto espacio bajo techo por producción o bajo techo por almacén, y vas a descartar este lugar. Antes de hacer esto, contempla cómo podría funcionar con un bodega móvil o unos bodegas móviles con las cajas secas de nosotros en ese espacio. Muchas gracias por tu atención. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Absolutely. So, Brady Rodgers, President of Mexican Operations, thank you for showing us the wow factor south of the border.
Thank you, Dr. Mann. And I meant what I said, so I'm going to give you my email address is brodgers@wowtrailers.com. And that's Rodgers spelled Rodgers. Now you know how to get in touch with me.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Guys, you can find us at www.warehouseonwheels.com. I'm your humble host, Dr. Mark Mann, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Wow Factor.